Folks.
Okay.
All right, we're going to restart our regular Board of Education meeting. The first is for the good of the cause. Do we have any guests that would like to speak today? Anyone online, Karen?
Nope.
Under information for the public. I do want to make a mention that there are going to be 2 board seats that are coming up for election beginning for July 1st would be the start of their term. Moving into our presentation, Sarah Allen will be presenting on our English Language Learner program. And so I invite Sarah to step forward.
Do you want it on the big screen, Sarah?
Yes. Do I need to email that to you? Is that the
No,
easiest
just-
way?
See what I can do here. Just give me a moment.
There's 2 different things. One says English as a new language and the other is English language learner. Is there one that's preferred?
There's not a preference, and from what I can tell, the English as a new language is when what we're teaching them, where
Okay.
English language learners encompasses our students, right? So,
Okay.
but they go back and forth between the documents.
I'm really close here. Thanks for your
Well,
patience.
and you could just leave it up there too, if you want. I mean, that's,
Oh.
if you're okay with sliding through it.
Karen can do it, yes. We can visualize.
If you're okay with, can everybody see that okay? All right, and I have a copy in front of me, so it's not, that's okay.
She has her microphone turned on.
Sorry, I am muted. Yes, I'm okay.
Refill.
So if you just want to slide, so this first slide just shows our overall population and a little bit of a trend from 20, you'll see 21, 22 to 24, 25. We've definitely increased our diversity from 2021, 22 to 24, 25. And we have a slight increase in English language learners this year. I will talk a little more in the next slides about what former English language learners are and ALS, but I can go into it a little bit here. So in the orange, that's students that are currently considered English language learners. If a student comes into our district and is identified as an English language learner, then they would fall into this category of students. If former English language learner is a student that was an English language learner and has tested out. So their proficiency is at a rate where they're no longer considered an English language learner. They're considered a former English language learner, but they also still receive services and supports for 2 years after they reach that status. Okay, so that's why there's a little bit of both on there, because we have some students that have reached that. Okay, and then, so as we look at instructional staff, you will notice that we have some supports in place for our English language learners. Our general ed staff is at 62%. Then we have the special education pieces. There's related service provider pieces in there. There's my role and the CSE chairperson's role in there, but then that purple sliver is our ELL teacher. We do have a teacher that goes between both buildings and works with our English language learners. So Mary Smith is doing a wonderful job. She's new to us this year, and she's doing a great job navigating, going between both buildings and covering all of the students in the district that need services. I often see her in her room at the elementary and here, sitting right next to those students and working right with them. Also, sometimes though, it's nice to see, sometimes they're having a birthday celebration when I walk by because it's a student's birthday. So just really making all of our students feel very welcome here. She's done a really good job with that. We also have Kara Atkinson and Jen Lawrence are also working with our students some up here at the middle high school because of the way the split in the schedule is. So they are also helping a couple periods a day with our English language learners as part of their day. And then we have a teaching assistant at the elementary school. predominantly in kindergarten right now, but she also had been working with our English language learners and is currently working with English language learners, and a teaching assistant at the middle high school as well, that helps support our students throughout the day. That's kind of our breakdown. Oh. Can probably do it now.
All right, Sarah, you
Okay,
you got the
thank
power.
So then if we look at just the district level pieces, we do have a few students at the UPK level, which is good for us to know. There's no, at UPK level, there's no particular regulations for that, but it's just good for us to know who's coming in the district as well. And then you can see the middle high school has the majority of our English language learners, but the elementary also has a good percentage of as well. So when you look at this in total, that equates to 27 students in total when we look at it, break them down, just so you have ideas of numbers. Then the last 2 years were our first years that we had English language learners that were completers. They graduated. And so we're just kind of starting to keep track of some of those numbers. The way that New York State has set it up is that our students, whether they're English language learners, whether they're general education students, whether they're students with disabilities, they all need to be able to pass Regents, and they need to be able to meet that same proficiency level to be able to graduate. So for our students that are learning English on top of taking Regents exams, it can be difficult at times for them, right? But they're working really hard to make all those requirements happen. There are some testing accommodations that English language learners can have, but it's very specific what those accommodations are. But we are watching them meet with success. You can see 5% of our graduating class last year was made up of English language students.
Sarah, could you just back again? What was the SWD, the huge jump in that?
Students with disabilities.
Okay,
Mhm.
that's, yeah, really. Now, are the English language learners considered in that 26?
No, they're just
Okay.
like, I just kind of left it broken up so we could see our different variety of learners that we're supporting to be
Okay, no, I'm
completers.
just looking at the pretty substantial jump in that category from last.
This, yes, it was, and sometimes that depends on the size of the class overall and what the
Okay.
percentages of students that have IEPs.
Okay.
I have a question here.
Yes.
With a really small population, it's probably hard to see trends,
Mhm.
but do you see trends? And can we project out a couple of years as to what this pie is gonna look like?
I think that that might be a little bit hard based on things that are outside of us right now about where those trends will stay. We were trending, this was a pretty up until, I mean, even this year, we've had quite a few students move into district. So if that continues to happen, then yes, we'll see that trend. I just don't know with things, like I said, that are outside of what we can control in our district, if that will continue or not. But it is nice to see the growth that we've had in that area. It's nice to see that diversity in our district and classrooms. And so I hope that, you know, at least the students that we have right now will continue throughout their educational careers classes, I hope. So this slide just briefly goes over the screening, the identification and the placement, and then the exit criteria for our students that fall under English language learners. So when a parent comes to enroll their student, we have a questionnaire that they fill out that asks them about what their home language is. And based upon how that questionnaire is filled out, we would then do an individual interview. Usually we're right there talking with the parents as they're entering. And then that would determine if we need to do what's called they call it the short license health. That's kind of their first, it's a New York State assessment, and it gives you an idea of where their English language level is at. So students would take that. If the student tests out as commanding, they're not considered an English language learner. So we have to do this assessment within 10 days of the student arriving in our district. And we have to make sure that they have not had this assessment anywhere else in New York State. So if they've been placed in a New York State school before they come to us, we have to get this information from that school. But that tells us how we need to set up their programming. And then there's different levels: entering, emerging, intermediate, transitioning, and expanding, and then the commanding. So when they are done with being considered to be ELL. We do not offer a bilingual education program. What we offer is an English as a new language program. Bilingual education program would mean we would have classes that are native speaking to their native language, as well as classes that are English speaking as well. So we don't need to have that because we don't meet the criteria to have that right now. But we do provide the English as a new language program here in our district. And we meet with every family to explain that difference to them. And so we go over that with the families as well. And then there's different exit criteria. So each year, when a student's identified as an English language learner, they take the NYSES slot in the spring. And the NYSES slot looks at reading, writing, speaking, listening, tests all those areas. And depending on where the student places, that is how they would eventually be able to no longer be identified as an English language learner. So scoring at commanding or proficient is a way for them to become a formal English language learner. And then scoring at expanding or an advanced level, but they also are taking their New York State assessments or they're taking their Regents assessments. So depending on where they score on those, that is another way that they may exit English language learner status. And then former ELs are entitled to 2 more years of service after they exit, and then after that, they're considered ever ELLs. And that just means that they were once identified as an English language. Much, but this is our guidance on when a student, depending on where they test out at, when they take that NYSES Pell or the NYSES slot, that then tells us how many minutes they end up needing per day. So there's a set of minutes for K through 8, and then the next one is the set of minutes for 9 through 12. This addresses your question a little bit, Don, the mobility of families. We've had 10 students move into district this year that require English language learner programming. And since 2021, we've only had 6 students that have moved out of district that have fallen under our out programming. So most families move here and then end up staying. So it does seem to be pretty stable.
Sarah, we do not get any additional funding from New York State for any of the additional students coming in.
I think 8 starts at 30, a population of 30 students. So we've yet to hit the threshold.
Is that kind of prorated based on the size of the district, or is that across the state, whether you have a large or a small district?
Yes.
It's still 30.
30 and above, yeah. And in my discussions with the regents and our lobbyists, I've made it clear that the financial impact,
Yeah, it's
make
huge.
it based on the number of students, period. Like,
Yeah, absolutely.
because you add those minutes up and
Yeah,
to support those kids. Come
no,
on.
absolutely.
We can talk specifically about our ENL teachers and our ENL TAs, but we also, and then Kara and Jen, but we also have like our reading specialists help, speech pathologists help at times. So there's a variety of people that students are working with just to make sure they're getting everything they need, like. And then there's other people as well that are helping. So this talks about the full-time teaching assistants at elementary and the middle high school. And both of those, we're lucky enough to have both of those teaching assistants are also Spanish speaking, which is predominantly the language of our English language learners, but it's not the only language of our English language learners. But those, we also have a teaching assistant district that can speak Russian. So we've been able to, when we meet with families, have a person right there to be able to translate with the families, which is very helpful. Speech language pathologists, reading specialists, the school nurses do quite a bit of work for our English language learners because they're helping them to make sure that they have all the appropriate vaccinations that New York State schools require, and all of those pieces. So they're doing quite a bit of work helping to make sure they're receiving insurance and things like that. So it is a team effort. Our registrars are helping to translate documents that we're giving to families. We have new technology that's being utilized by teachers. Last year, we introduced microphones. Students also have iPads that they can hold over a paper and it will translate for them. We also have our district-wide social worker also helps if there's other aspects that the families may need help with. And then this year, we created more of a standard operating procedure just to kind of make sure that we're hitting all the areas we need to as family centered. So this still is a growing program for us. I think some of the next steps that we need to look forward to over the next year is more professional development for all of the staff. Staff want to work with these students and want to know the best strategies to make sure the students are getting everything they need in their classrooms. So providing some professional development for that is going to be important. And then starting to look at maybe organizing some more cultural diversity events, celebrating some of the diversity that we have here in our district. So,
Sarah, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm trying to figure this out. 100,000 for, say you have 27 people in this category. My math skills tells me that's 5% of the K-12 population.
I think so.
That's significant.
And I hope, hopefully, if we, hopefully my math skills were right on this.
I think you put 5%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm gonna hope.
So that's 5%, and you say we don't get anything for it in terms of
You know, it's big, yeah.
thing, and the cost per student is obviously higher. So, okay, that seemed extraordinarily high to me, but I guess you're saying that that's what it is. The other thing, I asked you this question, I think the last time you gave a presentation about, of these 27 people. You say it was predominantly Spanish, you mentioned Russian. I think the last time you said it was Bosnian.
Yep, sometimes we have, yes,
Yeah,
yes.
well, I mean, I understand that locally, but.
Yeah.
But, I mean, are there any other,
Currently that,
one-offs?
currently those are the languages that we're supporting right now.
Okay.
Mhm.
I expect the Spanish, but, and, you know, being here locally and going out to dinner, you know, there's a lot of Bosnians.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. That's good. Well, we're serving the community.
It's good.
But Don, I think you make a, I mean, you look at our population and there is a lot of, different needs, right? Within, if we just
Oh,
look
yeah.
at we have our general education population, but then if you add those percentages to between special education and English language learners, there's a lot of different needs that we're meeting. And unfortunately, some of those are, some are somewhat funded and some are not funded at all.
Well,
Which is,
they're mandated, so.
They're
not
mandated, yes.
Optional.
Yeah. Any other questions?
Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you
We
very much
appreciate
for
it.
the presentation.
Thank you.
Into our report section, and our first is our budget performance report. Mr. Dana?
So hopefully you've had the opportunity to take a look at my report as of March 17th. You see that we are trending at that point in time, about a 5% increase in expenses over this time last year. And you just kind of look at that, you can see clearly the driving force in terms of employee benefits, equipment is a huge driver from last year to this year. But nothing really unusual other than materials and supplies seems to be a little lower, 20% lower than last year.
Yeah.
I know, I haven't figured it out either.
That's weird.
It seems like people are still requesting, supplies and materials like they normally do, but, just looking at the percentage, yes, we're still trending down.
Equipment too.
Yes, equipment is higher. I mean, part of that is, we did purchase a vehicle, a little while ago. You might have been seeing it drive around, black, Expedition. We had the van, but we couldn't use the van, so we had to replace the van because it was too big for what,
Okay.
we were allowed to do that. So we were basically able to swap it out, for a second, SUV that we were looking to purchase anyway. So now we have, two SUVs that we use for, transporting. In fact, I think we use them on a regular basis to transport our kids, to Saranac Lake for, in the wintertime, it was for hockey or for alpine skiing. And, for this, spring season, it's for lacrosse. So, we have, typically we have some, Sam Perkins or, outdoor, groundskeeper does a lot of the extra, driving, because it's fewer than, the mandated number of students, we can put in the expedition. So that's really what's driving that equipment, line there, is that one purchase. But we're trending about where we typically have been over the last few months in terms of that, 4 to 5% increase in expenses. Revenue, right, as of March 17th, is about a 2% increase over last year. Again, that is about typical, that's what our increase is, our cap and all that. Basically what's left is, our outstanding state aid, is what we're waiting for over the next few months. Is what we really will make the budget whole, in terms of our revenue by the summertime. Questions on the performance, the budget performance? Nothing I see is standing out in terms of, oh my goodness, we need to stop spending today. Maybe stop spending tomorrow, but not today.
Give us a little more detail on the BOCES, please. Why they go so much?
That is probably, we look at that 10%. That's always about, and most of these are always about the look and time. When we make that payment, like we just ran a warrant today and we have budget, BOCES payment. So
Got it.
really depends on when those payments were made this year versus last year. Really sets that trend up. Like, I've always said these are always just a snapshot because if I did a snapshot as of today, you would say, oh my goodness, where are we? We're underwater. Because as of today, we're sitting at a little over $1.2 million more this year than last year. And you would say, oh my goodness. But just 2 weeks ago, we were only, $750,000 over. It's always about, it's a snapshot in time.
Okay.
Other questions?
Excuse me. If not, we'll go on to the treasurer's report. Thanks, Dana.
Yeah, that's right, it's right up there. Trust report, look there, we're still sitting at total balance, as of the end of the month. It was, a little under $17 million. Again, just to kind of highlight, it's a broken record, but I say it's from November on, our cash receipts are typically much lower than our cash disbursements. We only brought in about $221,000 last month, but we had $1.7 million go out. But as we talked about it in the budget workshop, 80+% of our revenue comes from the tax base. So 80% of our revenue is already in our accounts by November. And then whatever's outstanding, the county then makes us whole. That's actually coming up early April. We're going to get a payment of a little over $900,000 from the county that will make us whole in terms of our tax base. That happens every year. Whatever the levy is, whatever we raise through the tax levy, between property owners paying it by November 1st, or if it gets allocated to the county then makes us whole, usually early April. So the money's, from our tax base, it's always, it's a given. We're gonna get the money from our tax base and our property owners, type of deal. You can see we're sitting at a little over $15 million still sitting in our reserve accounts. That's a nice place for it in terms of generating additional revenue through our investments. But as you know, as that goes down throughout the year, then the amount that we're getting on our return will go down. And again, as we highlighted at the budget workshop, as we spend down and use money in terms of our allocated fund balance, that will also have an impact on how much money we're sitting in our investment accounts. That will then trigger and drive what we will get on our rate of return. So the less money that we have in our reserve accounts will also equate to less money in our returns, and that has to be factored in future budgets. As money comes down in one area, we also have to reduce the investments that we are using for a revenue source as well. But all in all, we're still trending. This is a typical treasury report for the end of February. Nothing unusual here. We are still healthy and we can pay our bills on time.
Any questions for David? If not, we'll move on to the superintendent report. And Tim, please.
All right. And if anyone's having issues with board docs, you're not alone. We're having some issues here loading some things up, but
I did too, but I got squared.
Oh,
away.
good. Okay, excellent. So just to kick this off, we had lots of professional development last week. Some that I really want to focus on in particular is the Amplify trainings that took place at the elementary school. So with the exception of kindergarten, who started our Science of Reading ELA program the previous year, our 1 through 5 staff are taking the bull by the horns with our Amplify reading program. This is their first year. And they had an opportunity during professional development to meet in grade bands, kindergarten through 2 and 3 through 5. The K through 2 teachers worked on ways to enhance comprehension using spelling trees to visualize multiple spellings for one sound, teaching trick words that are not traditional sight words, teacher-centered engagement strategies versus student-centered engagement strategies, and good practices to customize lessons. And 3 through 5, they really looked at informational texts, data-heavy texts that how to convey that information to students to aid in comprehension, and just looking into the text before you present it with the students to forecast areas that you suspect are going to be troublesome for students, and then to build in some scaffolds for them prior to the lesson. I did put the 2 attachments, which sort of just give a workbook understanding of what each grade band went through over the course of the training. I think it was super great. I'm very impressed with this program. There's a lot of cohesiveness to it. There are many shifts though that are happening at the elementary school that I want to account for. So our training last week really did focus on a lot of these shifts. Probably the biggest is pacing. There is a lot of material in our ELA program, and it's really been a shift in exposing students to a multitude of content and moving forward, as opposed to trying to master particular levels of content. And this is done by design. They've done the research on this with this program, that if you expose students to more content over time, what will happen is over the course of multiple grade levels, they will start to make connections with the different things that they've been exposed to at a tertiary level. And those connections are where memory starts to retain information. So as opposed to, going a mile deep in the trench, that's not always advantageous. But that's been a shift because we're all educators. And if we're going to talk about, a given subject, we're going to master that. That, of course, takes time. And then 9 months later, suddenly the school year's gone and you didn't cover all the content. And so that has been a shift. One of the recommendations that was presented during the training, because some staff are still struggling with the pacing of the program, given the amount of information, is that we're not looking to cut things out, we're looking to trim. And so when you're presenting a unit, if there are things your kids have a good handle on, you would see as a redundancy, trim those out, but maintain the unit, because ultimately what's taught at kindergarten and first grade, some of these units link to different units in the subsequent year. And that's, I think, one of the nice parts of this program is there's a skills-based portion, and then there's a content-based portion. The content-based portion, I put my history hat on. I presented this to the board before, if you may recall, that, you know, there'll be one about early American civilizations in first grade, and then, you know, there'll be, in second grade, there'll be something about the era of exploration, and the kids leverage the data, that information they got in first grade. And in third grade, there's something about, you know, trade, and all those things parlay off one another. So I think that's been helpful for staff to just know that we're really trying to just increase exposure for students, and that over the duration of 5 and 6 years, we're going to see the full results of this, as opposed to I need to cover everything to the greatest level of fidelity in my 1 year I have with my kids.
Tim, is that, does that come down from above, that thinking, because the landscape changes, has been changing forever?
Yeah,
I mean,
sure.
Will change forever.
I agree.
Are those, do you adopt that at a regional level or a national new way of thinking?
So a lot of it has to do, it's a great question. A lot of it has to do with the research in like literacy. So if you look at when you say it doesn't come down from above, yes, in the sense that Governor Hochul came out and has required schools to adhere to the science of reading as the primary way to teach literacy to students. But that's a core ethos of the Amplify program, which is probably the most accredited science of reading program that is out in New York State right now. That it's not the mile deep, it's a mile wide, the trench. But that was the point of this training, is to try and teach that to the staff, that that's what we're going
That
for.
New York thing.
Well, the program goes beyond New York. Like the science of reading has always been around. It's just different ways to teach reading has been in vogue at different times, like the Lucy Calkins methodology, which of late has sort of been, you know, disputed. That was the predominant Teachers College philosophy for 2 or 3 decades, and our school really bought into that wholesale. But I don't think it's New York specific. I just think that the mandate in New York State is to comply with the science of reading, whereas other states have not been as direct. I think actually even before that mandate, is DeWine from Ohio?
DeWine from Ohio.
Ron had brought that up
Yeah.
about Ohio's insistence on moving towards the science of reading, and that really, in some parts, spurred us to action.
Yeah.
But it's interesting, and it's a shift, and it's not always going to be comfortable. And then ultimately, what is that authority based in? It should be based in research. And if it's not based in research, then you know, we need to shy away from it. So
Yeah, but the science of reading has been around for a very long time. also.
absolutely. So this training, I think, was helpful in regards to just kind of reviewing the focus, the philosophy of that with staff. Else was. So yeah, so if you get a chance, check out the workbooks. I think they're really helpful.
Yeah, they are.
It's good to see, you know, a cohesive approach to our professional development for our elementary staff. Last week was also our first ever Student Wellness Day. So this has been the product of really 2 years of collaboration with our student wellness committee. It's been a milestone for over a dozen volunteer teachers. Ms. Adsit really led the effort in coordinating the group. But we're actually in the presence of one of our staff members who was a big part of it. So Ms. Pat Notice here, she's one of our go-tos at the middle high school. So thank you for your work both in the library and with the Student Wellness Day. I got to pop around and see kids doing all sorts of great things. The day was built around some quiet space activities with, you know, different crafts, puzzles, reading, etc. Physical activities, walking, yoga, social emotional activities, gratitude journals and letters. I actually, as a dad, got a letter from my son organically in his folder. Thank you, Wellness Day, for propping me up in my darkest hour. I appreciate it. And then there was a guest speaker, Chris Sargent, who's Doffed the Sleep Guy, was here, and he talked about the effects of blue light from screens on sleep and health. So students got a good dose of that, which is beneficial. So I applaud everyone for the effort, and I think it was great. If you do have access to the document, I did include a chart that Ms. Blacksmith has helped to assemble for us. Our 3 through 8 math and English exam results were released. And this gives us a look at how our student proficiency has been over the last 3 years, really the post-COVID slump, to the previous 3 years and the 3 years before that. And what I'll just share with you is that it's good news for us presently. If you look at the 2 top boxes, ELA 3 through 8 proficiency first, our highest proficiency levels for grades 3, 4, and 5, and grades 6, 7, and 8 have taken place from 2022 to 2020. There were not exams for 20 and 21 due to COVID. If you look at 17 to 19 and 14 to 16, those proficiency levels in ELA are lower than where we're at in the last 3 years. So we are seeing growth, which is great. If you look at the math, it's by and large a similar story. So 3, 4, 5, the last 3 years, 59% proficiency. Prior to COVID, the 3 years preceding that was 33%, 34, 4, and then in 6, 7, 8, 24% versus 18 versus 19. So that's growth. So we're really happy to see it.
Yeah.
And then when you drill down into the 3-year period that we've highlighted here, the last 3 years, this shows you in the respective grade levels, anything shaded in green, that's within those 3 years, 22 to 24. That's the highest proficiency that was obtained within that 3-year period. So some of these have been obtained, in last year, grade 4 and grade 6, grade 5 in ELA, grade 6 in math last year, 6 in ELA, 8 in ELA. So not only are we trending towards growth, but those particular cohorts are trending towards growth the most recently. So I think that's encouraging. But we'll keep tracking it. And this is one data source, which is really just based upon a handful of exams that are done in the spring. So we have our own data system, in part because this information for last year was released relatively recently. What are you going to do with that from a practical standpoint? I mean, the year's already halfway done with students. So we utilize the NWEA tests to track how students are doing over the course of the year in real time. And family reports at the elementary level started going home this week. So that's the first time we've done that. And I think at the middle high school level, they're going home by the end of the month. So we're giving parents some more data to track how their students are doing, open up conversation. Let's talk about Cinderella. The belle of the ball. Did you see it? I mean, anyone who saw Cinderella just.
I saw Taylor last night. He's awesome.
Wasn't that amazing? I don't want to pick favorites, but that was a special show. And it was all hands on deck. Mr. Gotham did incredible work in building the set. It was outstanding. Miss Kern, our resident seamstress, was fantastic with production costume. And of course, Mr. Prosper's overall production was just fantastic. The pit was great. I mean, we had Mr. Blevins, Mr. Baker, Miss Adsit, and Mr. Lett all in the pit. So that's Grace. And also Grace was in the pit for Cinderella. So thank you for that. And thanks to the LPCA, it was cool to be at our local art center for the production. So all in all, it was a Cinderella story. It was great. Speaking of the arts, we have our upcoming K-2 concert. And I also want to draw some attention to the recent national anthem performance at ECACs done by our elementary school chorus. So tomorrow is the K-2 concert. It's at the middle high school at 6 o'clock. Today I got to watch the K-2 students travel up to the big school today to be in the auditorium. And many of them is their first time being on a stage. And Mr. Blevins, our elementary music teacher, was just so artful in his approach in addressing the students and bringing them a sense of calm and purpose. And I was very proud to be just witnessing their joy. It was a wonderful sight to behold. So I think the concert tomorrow is going to be exceptional. And I also want to congratulate our elementary chorus for performing the national anthem on the biggest of stages, the Miracle 1980 rink on Friday for the ECAC tournament. There's a video of it circulating in Parent Square. If you haven't seen it, it's great, but fantastic. It's wonderful stuff for our kids to be doing. Our older students have an opportunity to travel on a college tour. This has been something we've done over the last several years. We traveled towards Clarkson, Potsdam, St. Lawrence University last year. This coming trip is focused on the Champlain region, so Plattsburgh State, St. Mike's, and UVM, all of which will happen on April 4th. This is funded through EdOp, so we appreciate Lake Placid Educational Opportunity Fund. And this is the hard work of Ms. Haymaker and Mr. Clark.
And what grade levels attend this?
I think this is juniors that are going on this trip. Family Math Night is a favorite, certainly in the Seymour household. This is the third annual Family Math Night that we're having at the elementary school. This is the brainchild of Haley Fermanti. And despite being on maternity leave, Ms. Fermanti is heading this up for us yet again. And the focus of Family Math Night this Thursday at 6 o'clock at the elementary is 2- and 3-dimensional geometry. So we're excited for this. It's a lot of fun. There's snacks, there's games, and most of the math department comes together to preside over stations for the students. So it's a really great thing to see. On the community side, Camp Placid, the Youth Commission program for the youth within the town of North Elba, is returning to the middle high school this year. So the lawn building at the Horse Show grounds is slated for demolition, and the students are going to be housed here. So there's lots of benefits and efficiencies that will happen as a result of that. Student side, of course, they can go to the beach every day if they so wish. They'll have access to the oval too, to run around, which is great. But also our school summer meal program, we can provide that directly here, no need to transport it, so it works out. So we're pleased to be able to help out the town as they work through the long building being fixed up. And then last but not least, the DC trip. I just wanted to pay a little bit of homage to our 8th grade students and staff who are enjoying Washington, DC as we speak. They're probably just finishing dinner right now and getting ready to see Sister Act at Ford's Theater. The same show Abraham Lincoln saw, of course. Or was that 2? I can't remember. But it'll be great. I'm excited for them. And then that starts the long slog back home tomorrow. You're gonna have to be full dad mode after that, Mr. St.
Can we keep one more day? Nice and quiet.
I'm enjoying it.
Did they hit the cherry blossoms? What's going on?
I don't know if they hit them because they had started before they arrived. Do you know, Ron, if the blossoms are out? Did you hear any reports
No, I
on
don't
that?
think they are.
No.
I think the weather was,
Yeah,
A little,
yeah.
but I don't know. if-
I didn't
Yeah.
see any pictures.
because they had started earlier, so. So yeah, they're taking off tomorrow morning. They'll be back here by 5. It's a long day for the kids and the staff, of course. But in addition, I look back at the agenda. I mean, what an incredible trip. The show tonight, they toured the U.S. Capitol today and the Air and Space Museum, Natural History Museum. Yesterday, they were at Arlington National Cemetery, the National Zoo, and the pandas are back, I'm told. And when they arrived on day 1, it was the monuments at night. So
No,
Pretty
that's
cool.
great.
It's a great trip.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Sure.
So good stuff.
Thanks, Tim.
Thank you.
Going into information for the board, under public content, it does appear that unless something changes, that we have 2 openings for our board this year. So there's some information there to petition for the board. There is an EdOp fund letter. And I just want to quickly bring to attention that our EdOp fund is going to fund some additional opportunities this year. The first is the 7th grade science and social studies trip to Fort Ticonderoga and Lake Champlain. They're also supporting the 6th grade science and natural field trip to the Wild Center in Tupper Lake. And lastly, they're putting money towards the cost of a summer enrichment robotics camp to cover technology and related expenses. So those are all wonderful things. That's something new. And then in addition, there are a variety of items for the board to look at and to further explore under executive content at your leisure. 7A minutes is under consent. Under personnel, 8A is under consent. 8B, coaching staff resignation, recommended action. Upon recommendation of the superintendent, accept the resignation of Jeffrey Potter, girls varsity basketball coach, effective at the end of the winter 24-25 basketball season. May I have a motion, please?
I'll move that.
Sure, there's some discussion.
Second.
Lots of decades of service to our district. I know there's a lot of female athletes who look to Mr. Potter with great respect. So big shoes and a big impact on those athletes for sure.
Yeah, it's always tough when you lose one of those dedicated coaches that has been with us for such a long time. So very, very much appreciated.
You still need a second.
I'll second.
You got a minute?
If there's no further discussion from anyone, please vote.
Seven yes.
Let's see, moving on to National Librarian Day. The recommended action is a motion to acknowledge April 4th, 2025 as School Librarian Day. May I have a motion, please?
I'll second.
Any discussion?
Thank you, Ms. Patnode, for all you do. And thanks to Ms. Haney as well at the elementary school for all the great work and the welcoming and engaging environments you create for our students. So we will remember you on April 4th.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, thank you.
Happy National Librarian Day. Thanks so much. Please vote.
7 yes.
9B, C, and D were all under consent. The last item under action is donation acceptance. Recommended action, whereas Lake Placid Central School Board of Educational Policy 6255, donations, gifts, and grants to the district allows for the superintendent of schools to accept on behalf of the board gifts, donations, and grants having a value of less than $1,500. Whereas monies have been granted as follows. The Adirondack Foundation Educational Opportunity Fund in the amount of $1,687 to be used for the teacher grant, math stackers for Lake Placid Elementary School. Now therefore be it resolved in accordance with policy 6255, the Board of Education hereby accepts the check from the Adirondack Foundation Educational Opportunity Fund in the amount of $1,687. May I have a motion, please?
I'll move it.
I'll second it.
All right.
To accept money.
Any other discussion? Except thank you for this. If not, please vote.
Exactly.
7 yes.
Now we move into linking goals with agenda items. If anyone has any ideas that they'd like to share.
How about number 5, technology, how the ELL kids are getting more technology. I think that's kind of neat. Utilizing specifically for them.
Okay.
Bridging that gap.
Number 6, finance with all of our budget and with Dana's reports. Anyone else? Students first and foremost. Tim's
Which one?
report,
Which one?
students first and foremost, number 1.
I know, but which one to attach it to?
Students first and foremost to Tim's report.
Oh, it's to,
Sorry.
thank you.
Anybody can think of anything else, please Karen, no. We are moving into our adjournment phase. Our next meeting is April 8th. That's just prior to our spring break.
Colleen, you missed a second.
Did I? Oh, I'm sorry. Going back, our second good of the cause. Anybody like to speak up at this point?
And I don't have it.
There's nothing there. We're now going back into the
Thank
adjournment phase, and our next meeting date and location again is April 8th, right before Easter break. So there are upcoming dates there as well. Any old agenda topics?
Yes. The inclusion of students in the school board.
Oh, yes.
Good one, Doug.
Yep, that, we will add that. We have a policy that's ready for board review. So, thank you, Doug.
Thank you.
There is a free thing on NISBA coming up in April over lunchtime on welcoming a new school
Yeah.
board student.
Any other old items? Any new? If not, then propose that we adjourn the meeting and it's 6:22 p.m. May I have a motion to adjourn? Brian? Please vote.